Hello and welcome. Today we're talking about sadness. We're talking about my sadness in particular and what may be an incredibly important message my sadness has been sharing with me over the past while. I went for a walk earlier this week by myself in the woods in the evening, and my intention during this walk was to really just be very present with everything going on inside of myself and everything going on around me in the woods because it's such a beautiful time in the forest right now. And a few minutes into this walk, I felt this incredibly strong tightness in my throat. Or at first it was just a subtle tightness, and it felt like sadness, like a lump in my throat, like kind of holding back tears very subtly. And this is a feeling I'm used to feeling in certain circumstances. And it just came up really strong on this walk. And it got, at first it was subtle, it just got stronger and stronger, and I couldn't shake it. And I didn't really want to shake it because the intention of my walk was to feel the feelings, and this was my wish being granted. It was just a little bit, it wasn't necessarily surprising, but I didn't understand why this sadness was happening in my throat, this feeling of like holding back tears, tightness, frustration, because there wasn't anything that I was feeling upset by when I went for the walk. So I was a little bit, because it was such a strong feeling, I was kind of perplexed and very curious about it. So I started trying to describe it to see if I could understand it. Because the feeling was so strong, I was like, okay, well, let me just start kind of just spitballing and see if anything makes sense or feels right when I start describing the feeling. And the first things I think that I described, and I might have been talking out loud, even though I was walking around in the forest by myself. If there aren't people around, sometimes I will just kind of talk out loud. And even if there are people, sometimes I feel like because we live in the era of earbuds and stuff, you can kind of get away with talking out loud, and it's kind of socially acceptable if you're by yourself. Anyhow, so I started describing the feeling, and the first things that were notable were that it felt like sadness, it felt tight, it felt like frustration, it felt like a part of me wanted something it wasn't getting. And so I started thinking and saying, okay, is this a part of me that's kind of like feels entitled? Like it wants life to deliver to him, like it wants things handed to him on a platter. And does it not have an appreciation for process and hard work and timing and all of these things? And that sounded like it could match the feeling, this feeling of sadness and frustration and angst. But it didn't really feel like it clicked. And I kept on exploring and asking questions to myself, asking questions to the feeling to try to gain understanding of it. And after a while of doing this, all of a sudden, something very simple came to mind, or, came out of me. I just thought or said, I wonder if this is just a part of me that feels sad and deflated and frustrated because I'm not fully expressing my creative potential in the world. I wonder if this is a part of me that just it feels deflated and collapsed if I'm not being creative, if I'm not using my gifts, if I'm not doing what I really feel like I want to be doing in the world, if I'm not, sharing or growing creatively. And that was the thing that all of a sudden made this feeling calm down. The tightness in my throat, it calmed down quite a bit. And it just felt like, oh, that's so simple. It's not some deep kind of psychological wound, maybe. Maybe it's just that a part of me feels sad and frustrated because I haven't been doing my work. And my work would be comprised of things like this right here: making podcasts, videos. I'm a writer, so writing books, just using my gifts as a communicator and refining them and creating and then sharing that, giving that to the world. That was the thing that seemed like it matched. It felt like, whoa, I don't know if this is right. I don't know if this is the reason for that tightness, that sadness, that really strong emotional response going on in me. But I know that when I underlined this possibility, the emotions calmed right down in me. So I took note of it and carried on with my walk. The next day, I made a video / podcast, because these there's an audio and a video version of each of these episodes that I make. And after I made that, I noticed, wait a minute, sad feeling is gone. And the sad feeling was gone for the next couple of days. And I've noticed this in the past, that if I am not creative for too long, I get pretty bummed. My light of life just dims, and I feel more angsty, more frustrated, more there's just some kind of brooding emotional response that comes along with that. And it was cool to notice it in this context, to notice, wait a minute, I made that video, that podcast, and it calmed down. And then I know myself well enough to know that, well, this will come back. It's like there's something in me that really wants to create, to express, to share its voice, to share its story, to share its song. And if I don't do it for a period of time, there comes that frustration, there comes that anger, there comes that sadness. And it's a good thing to witness and to have a little bit of understanding of. And I wanted to make this tonight for two reasons. One, because I think I'm almost due for that sadness to return. And so I need to create something. And two, because it feels really beautiful to have another example of our feelings can hold such extraordinary wisdom and intelligence when we just make some space to feel them and explore them with curiosity. And sometimes that needs to be done with help, with somebody who can walk alongside us and hold our hand. In this case, it was enough to just be out for a walk. It was a pretty gentle feeling. There wasn't anything too traumatic involved here. But that feeling had this incredibly life-affirming and life-giving wisdom. It was like, hey, you should be doing this. This is what you want to do with your life. And if you don't do it, there's going to be an emotional reaction. And sometimes I curse it, because it's like, why can't I just feel fine all the time? And yet there's this sadness, this discontent that actually pushes me towards the things I really want, things that are really healthy and life-giving and positive for myself. And the cool thing is, in this case, even for others, because I created something that I shared with others, and there were people that consumed that and enjoyed it and found something that was positive for themselves in it. So that's a win-win-win situation for the feeling, for myself, for another person. And of course, in the context of me creating work and sharing it with the world, I think for my emotional health, it's really important to be doing that. And I also I only control the giving. I control the refinement of my craft, and I control how much of my gift I give. and I don't hold back, and I just, go for it. I don't control how the world receives that or doesn't receive it. That's all out of my hands. There's this beautiful line in one of Bjork's songs where she says, I can't decide, or she says, I can decide what I give, but it's not up to me what I'm given. And I think that's so true and so beautiful and so important to remember when we're sharing with the world, or we're showing up in the world, or being creative in any way. We control the giving and the quality of that, and the purity and rawness and sincerity of it. Whatever happens next, that's out of my hands. That's all that I wanted to share today. Just a little reminder of how our sadness can carry beautiful messages. And in my case, that tight feeling of sadness in my throat can be related to all kinds of different messages. It could be that I'm not saying something I need to say to someone. It could be that I'm feeling sad because I'm not having boundaries. So many things. This is just one of the multitudes of messages my tight feeling of sadness, frustration, and angst could communicate to me. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, you can let me know by giving it a thumbs up, by commenting, by subscribing. You can turn on the notifications so that you get notified when the next episode comes out. If you're interested in checking out my book, How to Open the Heart, An Incredible Journey into Vulnerability, Empathy, and the Transformation of Consciousness, you will find information about that in the description. And until next time, I hope that you have a beautiful day.